Westlake Village Art Guild studio tours. I'm Wendy Gordon, as you all know. I know you all. And I am really excited today to have Virginia Kamhi here to share her studio and her stories and hopefully some of her process and give us a little insight to her magic. So Virginia, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, well, I live here in Thousand Oaks, and I've lived in the same house since 1989. But prior to that time, I moved 17 times after I married my husband. And when we moved to this house, I said, I am not moving again. And a few months later, my husband informed me that he'd been offered a job in Washington, D.C. And I said, well, that's great. I'll see you at Christmas time. I just wasn't going to move again. So going back to my childhood, I had a grandmother who was an oil painter and a grand uncle who was an oil painter, and art sort of surrounded me. But I didn't take any art lessons as a kid. I was involved I took a lot of music lessons. I was a violinist. And I took ballet lessons, and there was no time basically for my mom to drive us around to more activities. So even though I wanted to take art classes, there was no time for that. And I do remember in elementary school always being very proud of my artwork and knowing that it was better than the other kids in the class, just having that knowledge that it was better. And my best friend in third grade, she and her mom took watercolor classes in the summer. And I remember being very jealous of Nancy's paintings and just really wanting to do that. And, you know, so at home, I tried watercolor. I tried everything. I always messed around with art. It was just something that I did. And as an adult, then I began to take more formal art training. We were living in Los Osos up near Morro Bay when my son was in preschool. And I took him out of the preschool that he was in because I was not happy with it. And I did a lot of research on the best preschools around in the area, and everything led me to believe that Cuesta College Early Childhood Development Program was the best place to have him. And in order to put him in that Cuesta College program, I, of course, had to take some classes at Cuesta College. So that's when I really started taking formal art classes. I took art classes for 2.5 years there. I took mostly ceramics and sculpture, but I also took drawing and composition. And I continued to do ceramics for quite some time. My first ever gallery show was in a gallery up at Harmony with some of my ceramics pieces. They were actually sculptural pieces. And I was juried into 2 student shows at Cuesta College. And so that was kind of my beginning of my art excursion. And then over the years, as we kept moving and moving, and I was mainly a concert violinist, and I played in the San Luis Obispo Symphony. I played in a lot of different local music groups. I recorded for PCPA Theater Fest, and played ancient music. I had a collection of ancient instruments. So music filled up a lot of my creative time, although I was still doing the ceramics thing. But when we moved away from the Central Coast and all of my contacts with music, we moved up to Walnut Creek. I decided that I didn't want to go through all of this trying to create this group of musicians around me and moving up the ladder and finally developing, you know, some belief in me as a musician, I didn't want to go through all of that all over again. So I decided to go back to school and get my teaching credential. So I became an elementary school teacher, and I taught elementary school for 23 years. And when we moved to Thousand Oaks, I was still in my credential program at St. Mary's College at Moraga. And they arranged for me to finish up my student teaching through Cal Lutheran. And so I was fortunate that they did that. But, you know, when we moved here, it was like, I was not going to move again. I got my teaching job. And if any of you know about teaching, you cannot transfer more than 5 years of service credit if you move to a new school district in California. And so you're losing all of your progress on the pay scale every time you move. In fact, I had a friend who had taught at the same school with me for probably 20 years. And she moved to Bakersfield, and she had to start on the bottom of the rung all over again. And that's just not right. So, you know, that was part of my decision that I wasn't going to move again. But I was always interested in art. And so in the summers when in order to take courses to move up on the salary scale, I would take art classes. And I took oil pastels, I took watercolor, I took all kinds of different art classes. And I just always was messing around with art. But the interesting thing is that my mother-in-law, when she retired, had taken up oil painting, and her paintings were, I'm sorry, they were not very good. She was not a trained artist, but she loved what she was doing, and she painted all these incredibly horrible paintings and framed them in these gilded gold frames and gave them to all of us in the family, and we had to hang them on our walls. So it was kind of a joke for me that when I retired from teaching, I was going to take up oil painting and paint a bunch of horrible paintings and gift them to everyone in my family, and they have to hang them on their walls. But at the back of my mind was a knowledge that I would be able to do better than she did with my artwork. I kind of knew that because I messed around with art. And so that's what I did. When I retired from teaching, actually, I spent a full year doing nothing but being in a funk and not knowing what to do with myself. And then my good friend Ann Sanders, who's on this phone call with us, on this Zoom call with us, convinced me to take a pastel class with her at Conejo Valley Adobe. And I did that. And I actually didn't like it, pastels too much. They were kind of messy and dirty. And the teacher that we had at the time was having us paint pine cones and vases. And it was like taking a drawing class all over again. And I just wasn't in love with what I was doing. But then also Anne dragged me with her to an art show. And at that art show, I met Jackie Blue, who some of you may know. She's an incredible pastel artist. And I loved her work. And I talked with her for quite some time at that show. And she said, well, Virginia, if you want to paint like this, you need to study with Richard McKinley. So I went home and I looked him up online, and I'd never heard of him. And I looked him up online and discovered that he was going to be teaching a workshop through the Pastel Society of Southern California. Well, I never knew there was a Pastel Society of Southern California. So I immediately joined the Pastel Society and signed up for Richard's workshop. And so that was really the kick in the pants that got me into pastels. I love Richard McKinley. I've studied with him now numerous times. I'm in his mentoring workshops periodically. And of course, I joined the Pastel Society of Southern California. And that was also crucial to my development as an artist, because that put me in touch with other people that could actually teach me and mentor me to do what I wanted to do with art. And I began studying 3 days a week up in Ojai with Jannene Behl and Bert Collins. And I just threw myself into it. And I have to say that I took it on. I've got this attitude that if you keep throwing yourself against a brick wall enough times, you're going to stick sometimes. And so I basically started painting in 2014, started studying with Jannene and Bert in 2015. And by 2016, I was winning awards and shows. And in 2017, I was juried into my first international pastel shows. And I've now been juried into 7 international pastel shows. And I've won over 23 awards and shows. And I've just thrown myself at it. So I think that's the key to success if you really want to pursue your art career, is just to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and seek out every chance you get to study and learn and grow. And I took drawing and composition at Moorpark College, and I took figure drawing at Moorpark College. And then my latest thing, because of the pandemic and all of the shows and exhibits and conferences and workshops I planned to attend were shut down. My latest thing was, I decided, well, I'm going to go back to school and get my master's. So now I'm enrolled in the master's program in painting at Academy of Art University. And I'm a quarter of the way through the program. And so, yeah, so that's my latest thing. And it takes up a lot of my time and keeps me from doing as much with my pastels as I'd like. But I decided to continue teaching at Conejo Adult Ed. And I've been doing it as a Zoom class, and Anne's one of my students. And that's keeping me doing pastels. I have to paint with pastels at least 1 day a week. So that's pretty cool, because the rest of the time I'm painting in gouache, I'm using charcoal, I'm drawing in graphite, I'm painting in oil, and I'm not painting in pastels at all for my Academy of Art work courses. So it's been an adventure. And one of the things that came out of my decision to go back to school is the need for a studio space, because I was working in a little 12 by 12 office that had file cabinets and computers and desks and all kinds of stuff in there. And there really wasn't room to be doing all of these different mediums. So we decided, well, we talked about moving, but I didn't really want to move again. I told my husband I didn't ever want to move again. And I didn't really want to move. We investigated putting a studio shed out on our back hillside, and learned that the city wouldn't allow that because there'd been some instability problems with the soil, with the soil there. So we couldn't do that. And I really didn't want to take up more of my backyard, which was already taken up pretty much with a swimming pool. So I didn't really want to take up more of my backyard with a studio. So we decided to go into the garage. And that was a major project, because our garage was filled to the ceiling with junk. And, and a lot of my art stuff was out here, frames and whatnot. And so that was major. We moved everything out into a pod, got rid of a lot of stuff, and hired contractors to come in and redesign my garage as a studio space. They put in support beams so we could have an attic that could support a lot of stuff up there. We now have a pull down ladder, and you can, the attic up there is pretty much filled up with my husband's books and all kinds of things that we previously had down in the garage. And now the entire garage is my studio space. They built 30-inch deep cabinets all the way around that are, you know, you couldn't buy those off the wall. They had to be custom built. And those will store my paintings and my frames and all kinds of stuff. I have, well, I'll show you around a little later, but they finished off all the walls, put in insulation and put in track lighting. We kept the garage door because if the house should sell at some point in the future, somebody might want an actual garage and not have just only a driveway. So we kept the garage doors. But anyway, so this last week has been quite a nightmare for me. And Wendy probably thought I was calling to cancel because our plumbing went totally out on our house. All of the sewer lines below the house had rotted out completely underneath. So the sewage was soaking into the ground, and the sewer lines all the way to the street had rotted out. And so we have gone through many days of no plumbing and no water, which, as you can imagine, during this time of the pandemic is not too convenient because you can't just run over to McDonald's and use their restroom. They're all shut. So this has been quite a little bit of an ordeal here. But anyway, we're finally up and running. Our pocketbook is much poorer, but we're back at it. And I have my garage space, and now I can work out here. I can do whatever I want. And my husband's allergies are not going to be affected by the oil paints because I can work out here. And so it's great. So that's my story about my art journey.
Virginia, your shelving I'm looking at behind you is amazing. And I'm wondering, does it have a lip on it? How do you keep the paintings from sliding off?
It has a lip. Let me show you around the studio a little bit. I'm going to turn my camera.
Ideas for things I've got to remember when we do mine. Because those are nice shelves, and I like how wide they are. The whole body of work here. Do you normally paint in like a plein air size, like a smaller size like that? Or do you ever do big giant canvases?
These are my smaller paintings. And in fact, these are the ones that are not showpieces. My showpieces tend to be larger. And I ordered these display panels. This was one of the other things that went wrong in 2020. All right, so I ordered these big display panels, and they came, and they were, you know, these are like professional display panels, and they take up the whole garage door area. And I intended to have them all filled with artwork for this studio tour, but they came like everything else in 2020. With no couplers or connectors, so there was no way to put them together. So my husband rigged up this little thing, but they're not sturdy enough to, we've just got them rested against the garage door. They're not sturdy enough to hang anything on. But that was my goal, to have all of that. So I want you to see these big cabinets that I have. They're really nice, and they're very deep, so they can support, you know, putting all of my paintings. I keep my paintings, my large paintings, in these boxes that are that I can carry them around to shows in, and they're inside these cabinets. But I'm just walking around. This is my this desk area here, my drawing table. is in the drawers down below. I have my drawing materials, but right now I have on top, these are what I would call my ocean colors of pastels. I have several different sets of pastels, and I keep them kind of separated somewhat because when I go to paint, I have so many pastels you just wouldn't believe. So here are my pastels over here, others on this table here. This is my regular set here. And I've got some boxes underneath that are not even opened. And down here on this end, these are portrait pastels. And I am working on a portrait right now.
Great.
And let's see. Oh, and I have a refrigerator out here, so I can grab myself a kombucha or whatever. I have my dog bed here, so my little dog can be here working with me. And I'm just going to open up this cupboard so you can kind of see how much I can store in here. I've got a lot of frames and some canvases, and I have down here on this shelf, these are all things that I use for setting still lifes. And I have up here more art supplies. Lots of stuff.
You look so organized.
Well, you know, I'm kind of a bit of a neat freak, and I'll tell you that. So I don't have as much stuff out as some artists do. But these are frames and framing materials and more of the same.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm
And
afraid I didn't.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm afraid I didn't plan enough storage space. And that's one thing that you really need as an artist.
Oh, you just, well, you know, and I actually haven't filled it all up, which is kind of great. But I have this, on this sort of desk area here, it's actually a workbench area here. I have some tabletop easels that I use for oil painting mainly. And I have a workbench over here that I can use as when I'm painting. And then I have gouache, and I have ink, and I have wet palettes. And I want you to see this because I love to go out plein air painting. To me, that's a really big, important thing to do. Just go out plein air painting. And see this little case right here? This is it. When I go out painting, that's all I carry. And this is my pastel box, a little tiny mini Heilmann box that I carry for my pastels when I go out painting. And so I've got it all down to a science. I can actually go out plein air painting with my pastels. A lot of people say, oh, how can you possibly go out with your pastels and plein air paint? But it's really quite easy. I carry this bag over my shoulder, and only other thing I have to carry is my easel. And that's a portable easel, so it breaks down pretty small.
Virginia, can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Could you open up your pastel bag, your plein air bag? Because at Barb Welch, I'm with TOAA and I do a plein air group. That's fantastic. Can you open that? How do you carry that, your pastels in there?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll show you how I fit it in there. Hang on a second.
Sorry to interrupt.
It's not that big a bag. But you see, I've got inside there, I'm trying to show you what's inside. I have roll of paper towels and some baby wipes that I always have when I paint with pastels. And my little Hellman box just fits right in there. Hang on a second, I'll show you. See, I can fit my little Hellman box right in there.
So your finished pastels are in the box when you finish?
Yeah, these are my pastels are in a box. You want me to open that up?
Well, no. Where do you keep your painting though when you finish with it out in your plein air?
Okay, so I take my painting, I have two pieces of stiff cardboard, and I mount my pastel paper on the board, and I put a piece of glassine, and sometimes I'll take 2 or 3 boards like that, and they're stiff and they just fit right in there.
Oh,
And they can't be bent because it's stiff. It's lightweight because it's stiff cardboard. It's not wood.
all right.
So it works really well.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, it is. And this bag actually came for free with some shoes that I ordered from someplace or other. And I thought,
Wow.
and yeah, and it just worked out perfectly. It's the perfect size. Here's something I meant to mention is that I got written up in Montecito Neighbors magazine, and Santa Barbara Neighbors magazine, and they did like a full-page article on me. I was so thrilled. Yeah, let me show you. They did a full-page article on me.
Boy, that's
I was
awesome.
really thrilled. That was pretty cool. So, I haven't been painting that long, but I've really just thrown myself at it. And now that I have this studio, I have no excuses to not be out here painting every single day. So yeah, it's pretty great.
Well, Virginia, thanks. That is absolutely gorgeous. And you are the perfect example of whatever they say. You have to do 100 paintings before you can consider yourself successful. But until then, you just have to put the time in. So you have definitely put the time in. If everybody would like to unmute and turn your videos on, if you have any questions to ask Virginia, we have a couple more minutes.
Virginia, one more question. I don't mean to hog the time here. You order your frames in gross? I mean, how many do you order at a time online, or do you buy them from a store, or where?
Well, I went through, I could go on for an hour, just about all my trials and tribulations with framing. When I started out, I was having my paintings framed by Yolanda Gonzalez up in Ventura. And, it was costing me between $200 and $400 to get a painting framed. And if you're trying to sell your work, that's just not sustainable. And so I started trying to frame my own. Actually, the first show I did where I really needed to have a lot of my artwork framed, I decided, and I was going to be selling it, was an Allied Artist show. And I think that was probably 2016 that I did that show with. That was my first real show with Allied Artists. And of course, that's about them, they're a plein air group, and all of the paintings have to be within the Santa Monica Mountains and Seashore National Recreation Area. And so I went crazy getting ready for that show. I had to have 23, 24 paintings ready. And I knew I had to frame them myself. I went over to Michael's, I bought frames, and then I knew that regular glass is a problem with pastels because it picks up a glare. Nobody wants to look at that glare instead of your painting. So I went down to this shop on Teal Boulevard, what's it called?
Yeah.
Frame House.
Yeah.
I went down there and he told me, well, if you're going to do an outdoor show, you need to be putting in non-glare glass.
Mm.
I'm sorry, that was a big mistake. That turned out to be an $800 mistake for me.
Oh my God.
I took in all these frames, had him cut the glass, non-glare glass, threw out all the regular glass. And then at the show, people were telling me, I can't see your painting.
Oh.
I sold actually a couple of paintings at that show, but one of the women that bought my painting said, I'm going to take this in and get new glass in it because I can't see your painting. She actually took it out of the frame to look at the painting so that she could see it without the glass.
Wow.
So then, and I knew that Yolanda had used anti-reflective glass on my paintings that she'd framed for me. So I started going to a guy down in Torrance, driving clear down there. And I was going down there maybe once a month, taking paintings down, having him frame, and he's really super reasonable. But now what I have him do is I have him cut glass for me, and he just cuts the glass. He'll cut museum glass and he'll cut AR glass for me, and he really doesn't mark it up. So I get the glass for a super reasonable cost. And another place that you can get glass that's anti-reflective glass is Frame Destination. They're online in Texas. And they're more expensive, but they're still much more reasonable. When I asked at Michael's to have AR glass put into a painting that I was going to give away, they were going to charge me $75 just for the sheet of glass. And it wasn't that big a painting. So I have to cut down on my costs any way I can. So now I'm doing all my framing. I'm only painting standard size. Well, I do have some that I'm working on that are not standard size that I'll have to take down to John in Torrance. But I'm trying to only paint standard sizes for frames that I can buy online. And I'm buying most of my frames through Jerry's Artarama. I'm buying museum plein air frames. And also I've discovered that Dick Blick has a frame that I like that's called a concerto frame. And it's quite nice too. And so I buy my frames online. And also, you know, I've got a show coming up at Topanga Gallery, and I have to have all my frames the same for that show. So if you're doing gallery shows, you don't want to have a mismatch of stuff. You want your work to be your signature, and the framing is part of that signature. So, so I have everything in that show is framed in this, for that show is framed in the Jerry's Artarama frames, except for one frame that I got from Randy Higby for a really super large 24 by 30 painting that looks the same. It matches the color and everything.
Virginia, I can recommend a fabulous framer. He's in Van Nuys. And what I did was I had a show coming up and I needed everything framed. And he said the more pieces that you frame in the same style, it's so much cheaper because they have these long pieces of wood. And if you're only doing one, you still have to pay for the whole piece. But
yes.
So if anybody would like to look him up, it's Z as in zebra, zartframing.com. And he's a super nice guy, and he really helped me choose styles. And
so that's great. That's a little closer than Torrance.
and closer than Torrance. I'm thinking to drive to Torrance would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
So
it is quite a drive. But I discovered him because of the Pastel Society of Southern California, my friends down there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have a question. Oops, sorry. I just have a quick question, and for some reason my video is not working. I think you disabled my video, but you don't need to look at me. The quick question is, where did you get your ledges? Are those Pottery Barn, or are they from somewhere else?
Those ledges are from Etsy.
From Etsy?
Yes, Etsy.com.
Yep. Yeah,
Look up picture picture ledges. There's this guy, Thomas something or other, I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, they were pretty reasonable, but he only has them in some, I think you can order custom sizes if you want, but I just ordered off the shelf sizes that he had available, and they came within like a week. And I know he has to build them separately, you know, and paint them and what all. So that was pretty good.
Do you remember roughly how much they are? Because they would be very handy to have.
I'm thinking I paid about $400 for 4 shelves. I think they were like $96 a shelf. Those shelves are like 4 feet long.
That's a good deal.
I thought it was pretty, you know, well, I looked some other places and there were other places that I could get them, but they were more expensive.
Yeah, I know Pottery Barns are usually pretty pricey.
Yes, those
Also-
were pricey. I checked those out.
Yeah, and who did, if you don't mind my asking, who did you use to do the cabinet work, or did you guys put those in yourselves?
No, it was our contractor. It was someone my contractor used.
Gotcha.
And I don't know his name.
I have a question. Is the Academy of Art University an online school?
It is. Well, they have online. You can go on campus in San Francisco if you choose, but no, they have an online program. In fact, they are the only online master's program in fine art and studio arts in the entire United States.
Wow.
There's one in
Thank you.
England that when I was researching, but they're the only online master's program in studio arts in the United States. And they've been doing this online for 18 years, and they have it down to a science. It's a very rigorous program. It's extremely rigorous, which I'm glad about, because I would feel like I'm wasting my money if I weren't learning anything and I weren't being pushed to the limit. So it's very rigorous, but it's a wonderful program. And the way they have it worked out is you know, they have modules. Each module is 15 weeks long. And during that 15-week module, you have readings to do and videos to watch for each week. And then you have assignments to produce for each week. And those assignments are critiqued orally and sometimes in writing and sometimes with markups by your professor. And I found that, you know, sometimes those would be like a 7-minute long oral critique of my work. And I get maybe 3 or 4 of those a week.
Wow.
And you can, and the program is designed for mastery too, which is another thing that's really wonderful about it. Because if you turn in something, it's so long as you turn it in early in the week. If you turn in something that you get a poor grade on, which I haven't so far, but if you do, you can turn it in again. You can resubmit it and improve your grade.
Oh, nice.
So, you know, it's a program that's designed for mastery. Actually, in my drawing class, I did resubmit a few things because I wasn't happy with an A-. But yeah, it's a great program. It just, you know, I feel like I'm really learning a lot, and they're very devoted to mastery. So it's a good program.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Good for you to doing it. It's a huge commitment.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
do we have any other questions? Because we kind of have to wrap it up. It's We usually go about a half an hour and sort of push it to 45 if we're having a good time. So we are past the 45. So we are really having a good time, Virginia. Otherwise, we will hopefully see you all at the awards ceremony on Saturday for the member show. And other than that, we've got a great demo coming up with Christopher Cook on the 12th. I hope you'll all come to that. It should be amazing. And other than that, Happy New Year and great to see you all. And thank you a million, Virginia. It was fabulous.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yes, thank you.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.